Greetings, I'm your host, Dr. Wolfula, and when I'm not putting candy apples into razor blades, I'm here at the Wolfula reviewing movies. Welcome to the second review of October 2019, where I'm covering another Wes Craven flick, Scream 2. Now, I've been meaning to pick up the Scream series again for a while now, and I admit, my review of the first film was harsh in retrospect. 1996's Scream is a definite solid horror film classic that I do enjoy. I just have some issues with it, and I feel that certain aspects of the film haven't aged so gracefully, but Scream was essential in bringing horror back in vogue through its deconstruction of the slasher genre. Scream was a sleeper hit, a low-budget flick with TV stars and little hype that went on to be a critical darling and make a mint. A sequel to Scream was all but guaranteed, especially since series creator Kevin Williamson actually sold the first film's screenplay as part of a potential franchise with outlines for sequels. Our boy Kevin made money that day. Scream was such a big hit for Miramax's Dimension Films that development of the sequel was fast-tracked while the first film was still fresh in theaters. I know nothing about the personal lives of the executive producers of the Scream series, Harvey and Bob Weinstein, but man, they sure do know their show business. Even if I don't know anything about the Weinsteins, I think it's safe to say they're probably good dudes. Anyway, Scream 2 had a hectic production. The sequel was released in less than a year, and an early draft of the film's screenplay was one of the first victims of internet leaks and had to be rewritten repeatedly, all while Kevin Williamson was busy writing I Know What You Did Last Summer and his TV series Dawson's Creek, so Craven had to flesh out underwritten sections of the screenplay himself. Due to the leaks, work on Scream 2 was secretive. The cast and crew were given scripts that couldn't be copied, and that didn't include the endings or had one of 3 fake endings. Now, there are conflicting stories about this, but supposedly because of the leaks, Scream 2's ending and killers had to be changed to maintain the surprise reveal. This would mean that the Scream 2 we know today is not the Scream 2 that was originally intended, and that Kevin Williamson had to possibly tank the quality of his script to maintain a twist. Kevin Williamson has said in recent years that the script for Scream 2 that originally leaked had a totally fake ending, and the one scene in the final film was always intended, but I'm not so sure a guy in 1997 is going to be savvy enough to know his screenplay was going to be leaked on the still very new internet, and why would he heavily rewrite the script if the fake ending was leaked? I just don't know what to believe, but regardless, Scream 2 was released in December of '97 and was another huge hit despite opening around the same time as fucking Titanic. But did Scream 2 measure up to the first film? Well, the movie is definitely aware that it might not. Let's get into the flick. Scream 2 begins with characters waiting in line at a movie theater. This must have been infuriating when people watched this film in theaters. Scream 2's opening is kinda weird, very meta, and somewhat more isolated from the rest of the plot, I gotta say. There is a subtle relevance to the plot, but it's mostly an opportunity to amp up the self-referentiality. The cold open concerns a couple attending the opening night of a horror flick, but not just any horror flick. They're going to be watching Stab, the self-parody film within a film that's an adaptation of Gale Weathers' book based on the events of the first Scream movie, and Scream 2's opening happens parallel with a remake of the first film's opening. That's right, the Scream universe is so meta about horror films to the point where it even has its own Scream movies. It's an ingenious idea that's only seeded in this movie, but goes on to be crucial to the next 2 sequels. Stab is apparently directed by the then trendy Robert Rodriguez before he made movies written by his children, and it's essentially a shot-for-shot remake of Scream, but it's a straight slasher flick with no self-awareness and dumber dialogue.
You know, I don't even know you, and I dislike you already.
I pretty much just described all the rip-offs of Scream. Tori Spelling even ironically makes an appearance.
Thanks to it with my luck, I guess Tori Spelling.
The couple in question watching Stab are Will Smith's wife, who played the worst character in Gotham, who's dragged to the movie by her boyfriend.
The horror genre is historical for excluding the African-American element.
Well, how you get your PhD in black cinema, Sister Soldier?
Jada is basically playing an obvious mouthpiece for critics of horror films, and Scream in particular, without having actually seen the movie she's up in arms over. Sounds familiar.
Sandra Bullock is playing right down the street.
Nobody wanna pay $7.50 to see some Sandra Bullock shit?
I gotta say, Sandra Bullock movies are no fucking joke. They're the real horror flicks out there. I get chills just thinking about Sandra. Ironically, the horror hater ends up getting into the movie when she actually watches it. Now, here's the extra bit of cleverness with the movie theater setting. Everybody is equipped with a ghost face mask. All of the theatergoers wearing identical masks in a dark space with tons of screaming while a movie based on real murders plays is a splendid idea. Why didn't I think of it? Even though this exact scenario is unlikely, still, you'll likely find yourself surrounded by people wearing costumes in the dark around, say, Halloween. scene. So the fear is the idea that you could be murdered inconspicuously and easily by an anonymous figure. In this particular sequence, you know that out of this crowd of Ghostface, there's gotta be a genuine one out to kill. You just don't know where he'll pop up, building tension. Ghostface could be anywhere, anyone, emerging from where you least expect it. Or Ghostface just stabs the boyfriend's head through a bathroom stall when he tries to listen to what's inside. Who the fuck leans their head against a dirty men's bathroom stall? So the theater scene with its excellent setup could have played out a bit better, and I kinda wish they figured out some way to involve actual main characters instead of throwaways, but still, it's an effective opening, taking advantage of the fact that everybody thinks Jada's murder is a gag. And this scene literally raises a mirror to the audience of horror movies. Horror films have nothing to do with it, but it really does say something about how numb we've become to real violence today. But enough of this shit. Let's get to the actual movie already. Scream 2 sees the return of Sidney Prescott, played by Neve Campbell, as a college student now with a better haircut and a replacement for Rose McGowan, and Sidney's constantly harassed by fans of the brand new Stab movie.
Who is this?
You tell me.
Corey Gillis, 555-0176.
Shit! Or at least there are attempts at harassment. That's nothing compared to being harried by countless reporters after the new string of murders, though. Sidney is the only returning character attending Windsor College. She's accompanied by Randy, played by Jamie Kennedy, who looks like he was trying to get a head start on being casted as Shaggy ahead of Matthew Lillard. And the video store clerk is now a pretentious film student in an equally pretentious film class discussing films pretentiously.
Movies are not responsible for our actions.
It's a classic case of life imitating art, imitating life.
And what starts as a discussion of whether Stab inspired the theater killings leads to whether or not sequels can be good or not.
Aliens is a classic, okay? Get away from her, you bitch.
I believe the line is stay away from her, you bitch. It's film class, right?
We can all only be so lucky to have our deaths be an opportunity to make movie references. Oh, Randy also has a class rival named Mickey, who is mostly a peripheral background character. Not like he's only slightly established throughout the film in order to have some late-stage reveal feel barely earned. No, Mickey is totally unimportant. Okay, the next scene where Sidney and Randy have a murder chat in the courtyard is fucking wild. The scene is only 10 minutes long and takes place in one setting, but it's dense with so much shit going on in a short span of time. First things first, Sidney meets her new boyfriend, played by Jerry O'Connell, who won the Kids' Choice Award for Favorite Fart in a Movie for his role in Kangaroo Jack, succeeding the 2002 winner, Matthew Lillard, who of course was in Scream 1. Just some movie fart trivia.
Go on, man. Jesus.
Oh, shit.
Gail Weathers, played by Courtney Cox, shows up, of course, chasing ambulances, and meets a local reporter, played by Roseanne's sister, who's totally not dropped into random scenes that establish her, so a reveal surrounding her doesn't seem like a total out-of-nowhere cop-out asshole. No, this character is also just a minor background character that happens to be played by a well-known actress. Pay her no mind.
I'm Debbie Salt. I took your seminar in Chicago last year. I was the one in the front row asking all the questions.
I thought you looked familiar.
Oh, well, thank you.
The media meetup leads to an outdoor on-campus press conference with the chief of police regarding the murders, like this is a Batman film.
Hi, Gail Weathers, author of the Woodsboro Murders. Do you think the killer will strike again?
After that, Sidney meets a sorority lead, played by Ellen DeGeneres' future wife, who pities Sidney, and you think the sorority characters are introduced to pad out the body count, but no, they just disappear at a certain point for some reason.
Everyone thinks that sororities are just about blowjobs, but it's not true. We only promote safe, friendly sex.
Okay, well, at least now I know sororities aren't just for blowjobs. After that pointless shit, Sidney spots Dewey, played by David Arquette, just wandering around aimlessly, and apparently he went out of his way to immediately take a flight from California to Ohio to see Sidney amidst the recent murders, a girl who was just his dead sister's friend. Not even Sidney's still living father showed up.
I heard about what happened and I was on the next plane. Can we talk?
Yeah.
It's just a little bit of a stretch to have all the characters back when Dewey is just introduced standing around hoping he'll run into Sidney. A better way to write Dewey's return would have been him showing up later as an advisor in the murder investigations, but instead he's thrown into this overstuffed expository scene. After even that, Sidney is jumped by Gale and Cotton, played by Liev Schreiber, the guy who she originally thought killed her ma, and he wants an on-camera apology interview for clout.
Just like you, I'd like to get back on with my own life.
So much stuff happens within this 10-minute scene, and Scream 2 is a 2-hour-long slasher movie. It's insane.
One more thing. Nice streaks.
Okay, so characters both old and new have been established in a short span of time, so now we gotta have some scary stuff happen to them for the rest of the movie. By having another horror scene with a character unrelated to the core cast that was just established. Cece, played by Sarah Michelle Gellar, basically playing a Drew Barrymore role, but with a bit of Black Christmas thrown in with the sorority setting.
Do you wanna die tonight, Cece?
Long story short, Cece gets the Ghostface call and takes the Ghostface fall. Wow, he just yeeted Buffy the Vampire Slayer like it was nothing! Cece's murder is quickly discovered and everyone leaves the frat party Sid's at right away except for Sid and Jerry, giving Ghostface the perfect opportunity to strike by, clumsily tripping into things. Are we sure this isn't Billy or Stu?
Dewey! The killer's in there and Derek.
Well, now it's settled. A copycat Ghostface is indeed on the loose, whose victims bear similar names to the previous films slain, and once again, Sydney is the prime target, and also, once again, it could be anyone and any number of people beneath that mask.
Well, it just seems to me that if the killer is repeating what happened in Woodsboro, it's quite possible that the killer could be from Woodsboro.
The magic behind the Scream franchise's self-referentiality and stabbings is the mystery element. These movies, at their core, are whodunits, and Scream 2 definitely takes advantage of that aspect. It's the Scream movie that reveals how Ghostface would be handled going forward after his originators were both deaded. Throughout the middle act of the film, the characters are less preoccupied with trying to catch Ghostface and more fixated on simply discovering the killer's identity. Nearly an hour passes in the film where only one character is killed. I'm fine with the film having a mystery and not having a ton of violence, but I feel like Scream 2 doesn't do a super good job of establishing the new Ghostface as a threat. I think you don't feel the killer's presence throughout the film like in the first, reducing Ghostface to a couple phone calls, a brief appearance during Sydney's play, and trolling Sydney on a computer that looked outdated the year the movie came out. Scream 2 relies on your past familiarity with Ghostface, and the character's been there, done that attitude does Ghostface no favors either.
I'll wait for video.
I mean, how can Ghostface really carry another movie when he hasn't even worked out the peripheral vision thing? Scream 2 could have established a more threatening incarnation of the killer. It wouldn't be that hard. Instead of just having a new Ghostface that's nearly an exact duplicate of Billy and Stu's in his methodology. Despite Scream 2 having more kills, it doesn't feel like it amps up the carnage much after Cece's death, even though Randy is like, horror sequels are bloodier and more gruesome.
Death scenes are always much more elaborate. More blood, more gore. Carnage, candy.
Funny thing is, after the MPAA gave Craven shit for Scream 1's violence, Craven decided to trick them by submitting an even more violent cut of Scream 2 than what was intended, so the MPAA would predictably ask Craven to tone down the ultra-violence, and he could just get away with the version he wanted to make in the first place. Clever, but ironically, the MPAA was fine with the ultra-violent cut, and Craven just went with his original, tamer cut anyway. I kinda wish the more violent cut was what Craven went with. It would have worked better as a commentary on slasher sequels like Halloween 2, adding in more unnecessary violence, and it would have, been cooler. Two of the key character deaths happen mostly off-screen, and the only particularly memorable death in the final stretch happens to throwaway cop characters who die immediately after making a gay joke.
Don't ask, don't tell.
The car crash death is really awesome, but it doesn't mean as much happening to some random dude I don't care about. I feel like Scream 2 focused too much on setting up a mystery and having a surprise twist again, giving us super obvious red herrings like the fame-seeking Cotton, who makes himself seem super suspicious, or Jerry O'Connell, who are both too obvious to be the killers. Jerry O'Connell couldn't be the killer anyway, because he has a fucking weird scene where he sings a song from Top Gun on a table during lunch to a standing ovation.
I love you. Isn't that what life is made of? I know it worries me to say.
This is Jerry O'Connell's only distinguishing moment in the film, playing the thankless role of Sid's bland new boyfriend, and there's no way they'd have a Ghostface sing a musical number. They're saving that for the Scream Broadway show. Scream 2 is about guessing. As Randy says to Dewey, anybody could be a suspect, but the movie doesn't give much when it comes to figuring out the mystery. It's more preoccupied with throwing you off the trail, so you just can't get invested in that major aspect of the movie. Literally anybody could have popped in at the end and turned out to be a killer. It feels like the screenplay was designed that way, and every character has either a motive, like Gale wanting another movie, or something suspicious about them, like Dewey, who showed up right away and has a limp that might be fake to make him seem inconspicuous. Then there are characters like Hallie or Gale's new cameraman, who I know next to nothing about, who could have turned out to be killers even. Hell, Ellen DeGeneres' wife, who had a couple minutes screen time, could have been unmasked as the killer to practically the same effect as the actual killers. Scream 2's production and the way the story unfolds treats the identity of Ghostface as crucially important, but it really really just doesn't feel like it fucking matters in the end when anybody could have been in that role. One of the most satisfying things about the first film is that you can rewatch it knowing who the killers are and see all the little hints to it. Scream 2 just doesn't have that going for it. The shining aspect of Scream 2 and the series going forward is its three main characters, Sidney, Gale, and Dewey. Unlike most big horror franchises where you watch mostly for the guys killing, Scream is all about the people having knives pointed at them. If you're watching Scream movies for the Ghostface of the week, you're doing it wrong, because outside of the cool Roger Jackson voice and the mask, Ghostface kinda sucks, and I guess it's on purpose, but he doesn't have a whole lot of appeal beyond a popular Halloween costume. Sidney herself is a much more interesting character this go-around, developing a lot beyond just sort of being the Jamie Lee surrogate of the first film. Sidney starts off seeming like she's moved on, but it's clear once the murders start again, she doesn't have the capacity to trust anyone anymore. She's always on guard and becomes much more eager to fight back. Neve Campbell does a great job of portraying Sidney as this isolated, tragic figure who exudes exterior power while at the same time being broken up inside over her past and uncertain future.
Stop treating me like glass, Dewey. I'm not gonna break.
David Arquette and Courtney Cox, who were at one point an actual couple, naturally have great chemistry together as the relationship between Dewey and Gale flourish in this film through their team-up. Dewey and Gale are the perfect odd couple with a Clark Kent/Lois Lane relationship.
Dewey, I never meant to imply...
How do you know that my dim-witted inexperience isn't merely a subtle form of manipulation used to lower people's expectations, thereby enhancing my ability to effectively maneuver within any given situation?
Dewey's a totally innocent, mild-mannered, small-town guy, and Gale is this big city broad who's easy to hate, coming off as a rotten bitch that's opportunistically chasing a story, but she does go out of her way to actually be selfless. Based on what I just described about the characters, it's clear that series creator Kevin Williamson's heart was more in the soap opera melodrama aspects of Scream more than the horror. I mean, there's a reason why he created Dawson's Creek and Vampire Diaries and why a Scream show was once on MTV. The drama stuff turns off some and attracts others. It works. I just wish the horror elements were a bit more substantial.
I need to be alone right now, okay?
Before moving on to the ending, I'd just like to say that Scream 2's soundtrack and score are solid. The film reprises Red Right Hand rightfully, and it doesn't overuse licensed tracks when it easily could have. Composer Marco Beltrami, along with Hans Zimmer and Danny Elfman at points, delivers a score that not only enhances the chase scenes, but also really complements the characters' personalities. The only real issue with the music is that it doesn't feel like the Scream series has a memorable, iconic theme created just for it, which is a bit of a shame. Alrighty, spoiler time. Skip to this time code to avoid hearing my choice words about Scream 2's ending. I have much to discuss. Alright, let's skip through some of this shit. Randy gets a phone call from Ghostface and is stabbed to death after talking shit about Billy Loomis. I think it's safe to say that he's been X'd. After Gale and Dewey team up, Dewey is brutally murdered. There's definitely no way he could have survived. Jerry O'Connell ends up crucified and covered in liquor. One of the least weird hazing rituals I can think of that's the perfect situation for getting him murdered. After the cops protecting Sidney get thoroughly destroyed, Sid and Hallie successfully sneak by a passed out Ghostface, but Sid decides she wants a peek under the mask, and her dilly-dallying gets her friend killed in a kinda lame way. Gale runs into Cotton, who has to be the greatest red herring ever because he's drenched in what looks like blood for no reason. What, did he go to Buffalo Wild Wings? Gale escapes and runs into the totally inconspicuous other news reporter.
Cotton, really?
Here's where things get really weird and abstract. Sidney returns to the campus where the killer would obviously know to find her, she doesn't seek help, and she's drawn into the empty auditorium where she can hear creepy music playing. It's so transparently a trap, but this script was still being written while they shot the movie, so I guess they just had to roll with this. Sidney finds her boyfriend strung up on the stage, but is also confronted once more by Ghostface, who thankfully switches from the cool Roger Jackson voice to a nerdy voice.
You really want to trust your boyfriend?
Don't you know history repeats itself?
Ghostface is finally revealed to be Mickey. Who? Oh yeah, the background creepy film student character that occasionally appeared to say something morose.
I used to realize the 90s is no time to play hero.
It's fucking stupid. Mickey is barely in the movie, so his reveal is just kinda confusing. The first time I saw the film, I struggled to even remember who he was. I don't even know how Sidney remembers his name.
surprise, Sydney.
I guess it was a surprise twist, but it wasn't mind-blowing. They might as well have cast an extra to be the killer. Making a minor character the villain is so basic. Of course, Mickey raises doubt in Sydney over whether Derek was a partner in all of this, but it doesn't really lead to anything interesting because Derek gets shot anyway.
This was just the kind of boy you'd like to take home to Mom, if you had a mom.
Fuck you! Oh! There's gotta be a second killer to lessen the lameness, so she is revealed. Gail. No, that'd take balls to do. It's actually, the background local reporter who is pulling the strings. The woman is actually Billy's mom and a bit of a reverse Mrs. Voorhees thing, avenging the death of her son, who was the killer in the first film.
There's only an estimated 97 active serial killers in the country today, so Mickey here was quite a find.
This is a neat idea, but making Mrs. Loomis such a peripheral character is the ultimate cop-out to me as a twist. They couldn't have thought of a more prominent role for her in the plot that doesn't make this ending feel like two people randomly walked onto the film set and said they were the villains in this scene. In the original Scream, Billy and Stu were main characters, fully earning their reveal as the villains behind Ghostface. It's such a major flaw with Scream 2. It feels like the fear of the ending being leaked led to the cowardly choice of keeping the villains in the background with little development until the end. Mickey himself makes no sense because Mrs. Loomis says she compensated Mickey's services by paying his college tuition, but he said earlier that he was planning to get caught by the police and blame movies for his crimes.
The effects of cinema violence on society. I'll get Dershowitz or Cochran to represent me.
Why would he need his tuition paid? To go undercover as a pretentious college student in a class that Sydney doesn't even attend?
Had to have financing. Tuition's expensive.
Why doesn't he need to be a student to murder college students anyway? Oh, whatever. The dude is fucking killed. I don't know why. Mrs. Loomis could have waited until after Sid and Gail were killed when she didn't need any more help, but okay, kill him. Now, the supposed original ending before it was leaked involved Mrs. Loomis actually recruiting Jerry O'Connell and Hallie as her killers, a hetero murder couple version of Billy and Stu, leading up to Cotton becoming a killer too. Now, Kevin Williamson has said himself that this leaked ending was actually fake, but I'm just not sure. The leaked ending would have been a slight rehash, but it would have felt a bit more earned instead of just having total background characters as villains.
My motive isn't as 90s as Mickey's. Mine is just good old-fashioned revenge. You killed my son.
This is something that really bothers me about the Scream series from this movie forward. They all ironically fall into this predictable formulaic finale where Ghostface is history and the killers just go unmasked and monologue victims at gunpoint. This shit didn't work out for the predecessors. I don't know why the killers keep doing this. The Ghostfaces are so successful as mass stabby dudes, but then they just sort of decide to become stupid at the end and give Sydney time to kill to work her way out of this shit. Come on, these movies are supposed to be so smart and savvy, but the killers never just shoot Sydney like they planned to originally. Eventually, Mrs. Loomis has Sid at knife point, but Cotton saves the day after taking a shower, I guess, to wash off all the blood. Of course, Mrs. Loomis tries to barter with Cotton by offering media attention, and Cotton actually seems receptive to this, the fucking scumbag.
So, quite a predicament you're in, Sid.
Cotton.
Until Sid gives him a counteroffer. It's kind of a hollow, heroic gesture if he would have fucking murdered Sydney if she didn't hook him up. Like, Cotton should go to jail, right? Whatever, Mickey comes back to life for one final scare, but Sid and Gail mow him down like they're LA cops, and Sydney also shoots Mrs. Loomis one last time, just for the thrill of it. So, happy ending, I guess. Sid lives, Cotton is a media hero, and guess who else survived? Dewey. I'm fine with him surviving, but he got thoroughly chopped up. How did he live through that? Why did Kevin Williamson basically write him out of the finale? This is the first sign that the series is a little too precious with its main trio. They're completely invincible, protected by plot armor in the craziest situations. Whatever, Sydney, walks to class, I guess. Honestly, Scream 2's a solid, well-made sequel with some cool scenes and good performances, but man, the horror, kills, mystery, and ending are all lacking to me. Scream 2 feels kinda rushed. I mean, why did it need to be made in less than a year anyway? They could have taken their time a little more, right? Oh well, I give Scream 2 a Mickey out of Loomis. Movies don't make psychos. Movies make psychos more creative. If you like this AHHctober video, like it, but if you loved it, subscribe for more and click that motherfucking bell icon to keep track of future uploads and streams. Also, be sure to follow me on social media on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Dr. Wolfula. If you'd like to pay me a visit this season at the Wolfula, download the free Popbase app to hang out with a virtual me, complete with exclusive vids, horror trivia, and answering your questions. Starting on October 17th, I'm having a horror trivia contest in Popbase all the way through to Halloween with new extra hard quizzes in the days days leading up to the 31st to win official Dr. Wolfula AHHctober merch. If you missed this contest, well, I'll have more in the future. Finally, if you can, support the channel by pledging to my Patreon, where you can get early access, exclusive vids, and shoutouts. I'd like to thank my Platinum supporters on Patreon for their pledges. The channel would be nothing without their support, and it's greatly appreciated. Thanks again. I've been your host, Dr. Wolfula, signing out. See you all next time.
It's Diane Sawyer. Hello?